end up. All right. So, welcome everyone to the second episode of NLP podcast with Manahil Hafeez. And again, today we have the amazing trainer June with us to talk more about NLP and another domain that we dive really deep into in the NLP. So that is timeline therapy. Even the name is so interesting, and this is one of my very favorite techniques. I love doing it. I love being a part of it, even as a client. And I still go through it, and every single time the results are so amazing. I still in the morning had a client who I went through with the process, and she was like, she said to me, Manahil, is this some kind of magic? And I said, oh, I keep hearing this for the past years now, and that excites me more than anything. But I just say one thing about timeline therapy. The magic of timeline therapy is the concept that it allows you to heal with your permission. So it is something that you are taking forward with your intention to heal. And I think that is a beautiful step of a client, of an individual to move towards the journey of healing. And I think this techniques becomes, a very beautiful way of coming out of it. So, yes, today we will dive into timeline therapy. Welcome, June. Thank you so much for being here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Manahil. First of all, thank you for inviting me to our second session. And a lot of things happened after our first session, and a lot of people got more clarity with neuro-linguistic programming. I'm so thankful and grateful for that opportunity. And I'm so excited for this session this evening.
Yes, so me too. So, June, let's dive into it. Let's basically talk about timeline therapy and how it basically came into origin. And I would love, to listen from you and how you see it, coming into being. And then, because the very great, our very great trainer, because we have both been the student of, Adriana and Ted. So Ted James being the founder of timeline therapy, and how do you see the origin and the history of timeline therapy? So what would you want to say about it?
Amazing. So, time therapy originated way back in the 70s and 80s by Tad James. And it had undergone a lot of revisions until right now the technique is more solid. And what's amazing was that the script really works. And the story there was that Tad was talking to someone, and then he tried a technique with that person, and then it worked to the person. And Tad, being Tad, he was thinking, this might help other people. And what's so amazing is that it's content free. What's amazing with timeline therapy is that it's what we call content free, right? We don't
Right.
have to share what you are experiencing or what you are remembering during that process. And what's amazing also is that all the trainers during all those years from 70s, 80s, when Tad shared timeline therapy to everyone, they were also putting in inputs, and Tad was refining it to make it more effective until right now what we have is a more concrete way of doing timeline therapy, so we are very fortunate.
Exactly. That's very true because, when I was taking my training as a timeline therapy trainer, Ted mentioned one of these things that, what we are teaching today is very different from what we have taught 5 years ago.
Yeah, I agree.
And that is why we keep calling the trainers for revision so that, whatever we are adding into it with the, because there are institutes that are licensed or certified to teach timeline therapy, so the revisions come from them also, like they talking to Ted that this should be better, this should be changed. And then he says that now we have come up with a lot of improvement, and this has come into what it has been now with the proper manual and everything. So yeah, that's very true, and I think that's interesting. And I think the basic and the most powerful thing in timeline therapy is it's not rigid. Like, it has been changing for many years,
Yeah.
and it has accepted and inculcated all the positive and all the wonderful feedback into it. And I think that is one of the reasons that it is so successful, because I think one of the best ways of TED was to be very welcoming towards the feedback, and incorporating it very actively into it, and taking that from around the world and putting things into it for making it the best version. And I think that is the reason it is like globally so very successful. I think, I think of it as one of the reasons of its success, because of the cross culture acceptance of the feedback. I think this is one really big thing into its success story. All right, so when people say, okay, timeline therapy or timeline therapy, and this is properly a trademark that it belongs to TED. So the usage and applications, if we talk about that, if we talk about the usage and the application of the timeline therapy, how would you, in the brief words, summarize time? Because it's not only confined to only emotional healing, it has
Yeah.
a lot. It's really extensive, right? When we go into the master practitioner, it goes really wide as well. So how do you see timeline therapy in terms of its vast usage and application?
Very good question, Minahil. Aside aside from releasing our negative emotions using timeline therapy, we could also use timeline therapy for anxiety, right? A very quick process, just less than, let's say, 10 to 15 minutes
Yeah, even
using
less than that at
yeah,
times.
less than that,
Maybe
right?
five, six
So
minutes at
it's just
times. Yeah.
go towards the future 15 minutes after the successful completion of the
Event.
problem that
Yeah.
you're anxious about, right? And also aside from that, we can also use it for phobias and limiting beliefs. And one thing that I also like about time and therapy is the timeline regression, the past life regression,
Yes.
wherein you
Forensic
can
regression.
go, yeah, forensic regression, where you can go back to the timeline of someone that you admire most, and you get the resources. And aside from that, I've been using pain paradigm as well for myself, and
Amazing.
I
Intervention.
became more aware of my negative emotions, and I realized that all the pain that I was having were also linked with negative emotions. So I could catch myself already. If there's a certain back pain or headache that I'm experiencing, I would ask myself, what do I feel right now? What negative emotion do I feel right now? And slowly it will just loosen up. That's so amazing because it's so diverse that we have all the tools to help ourselves, because before we help other people, it's important to help ourselves first, right? And that's what's amazing with the process with neurolinguistic programming, timeline therapy, because we are our first clients, and learning
True. Yeah.
learning all these techniques, we can just help ourselves anytime. Do you know that when I would drive and I would remember some memories with the negative emotions attached to it, what I do is I do timeline therapy while I will drive, and I will just park the car and just process it by myself. And I could already release that memory, that emotion connected to that memory. And it's so amazing because it helps me become free from myself.
Exactly, that's very true. Because I think once you go through the process, because the script of the timeline therapy, it says that make the learning so that if you need them in the future, they will be there for you. It's a beautiful process that once you go through the intervention and you bring the negative intensity of the emotion to zero, yeah, and it
Yeah.
disappears at that point in time. But when it tends to arise in the coming time in the future, the unconscious mind supports you beautifully. So
Yes.
this a particular intervention is not only adding, you know, you can say release and clean up, but it is also adding a lot to your future as well. Because people come and say to me that, Manahil, what is that particular guarantee that if we go through timeline therapy, the emotion is like not gonna come back? And I say, oh, it has to come back, because that is like, life is gonna happen and things are gonna come to you. But it's just that you are gonna become a warrior, like a fighter towards it. Your unconscious mind is gonna quickly support you to get rid of that particular negative intensity of that emotion. And that is the intention of timeline therapy. Because the second line in the script of negative emotion one script is that you are going to make the learnings, and unconscious is going to preserve it, so that if you need them in the future, it will be there for you. And I think that answers the particular question, that it also creates a map of positivity for your
Yes.
future as well. And I think that is very powerful in terms of, taking clients towards a long term success, and of course also helping them to not fall into a relapse of,
Yes.
negative cycle or negative emotion cycle. Amazing. That's wonderful. June, why would you not share with me? Like, wouldn't you want to share with me one of like two or three very successful cases where you feel like timeline therapy did a wonderful job, you as a coach and the client together, you guys made it work wonders.
Oh,
Anything that you would want to share? Yeah.
oh, very good, very good. First of all, I when I was able to do it to myself, and the initial negative emotions that we learn with timeline therapy is anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt, right?
Yeah.
And when moving forward, when I was doing that, I always felt that there was something missing. There was an emotion in me that was stopping me from reaching the next level in my life. And then what happened is when I was assessing, I realized that I had a lot of resentment in my life, resentment, envy, and all those other negative emotions. Is what's amazing is that when I was able to detect and had clarity that I needed to release that, and when I released that, just the floodgates open. The abundance, everything became so clear, and everything became so easy for my clients as well. We did a clinical study last June for patients with depression, and they were able to move forward with their life. I remember one of the clients that we did. She was clinically diagnosed with depression, and I was in tandem with a psychologist during this time because it was her PhD, and we she asked me if I could be the coach to release the emotions. And then she shared with me that after a couple of months, I think 2 to 3 months after doing the process, one of
Okay.
the clients that we did, she already found a new job. She already found her dream
Wonderful.
job. And the other one, she could already look at herself in the mirror, and she could already appreciate her beauty. Imagine just being able to appreciate, because
That's really
all the while she would always think that she was not pretty enough. But when
hmm.
we did timeline therapy, we were able to release all those negative emotions. They were able to finally forgive the past, right? Because what's amazing with timeline therapy is you get to forgive the past, learn the positive learnings, and let go of the negative emotions. So
Yes.
I also have one student. She's a OB-GYN. She's a medical doctor. And then what
Okay.
happened was she was so trapped because during the COVID time, they were the front lines, and she was based in Saudi during that time. And the story about my student was that since they were the frontliners, they were the first to get hit by COVID. And sad to say, when she was being moved to the ICU, her husband also had COVID, and he had a stroke. So she was in ICU for 3 months. 3 months. When she woke up, that's the only time that she realized that her husband passed away. And all her three children, other people were already taking care of them. Imagine, she fell into depression. She went into all those uh,
Obviously, yeah.
therapies and all that, no? And then when she reached out, she called me, she saw my post. I told her she was the one in charge for her transformation. And then what we did is we did timeline therapy just before we end the session. And then after our program, 2 months after, she was able to open her clinic in the Philippines. And
Oh my God.
then she messaged me that
Really massive.
yeah, 3 weeks in
Hmm.
her clinic, her total income was more than the combined income of her husband and her in Saudi. And she was so
It's a
afraid before,
beautiful,
right? She
beautiful
was so
story.
afraid of putting up her own practice, her own clinic in the Philippines, because she started her practice in Saudi. And she
Okay.
was she was restarting her life in the Philippines because she was so afraid to go back to Saudi already because of the trauma. Imagine, right now she's really thriving just because of that timeline therapy, and she is one
Timeline
of
therapy.
my master coaches right now. master
Oh,
coach graduate.
that's wonderful. That's really amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's always such a thrilling experience to listen to successful
Mm,
stories, and then what we do is, I think it's like a you can say an act of prayer also. I think it's like in our language we say it's like ibadat. It's like praying. It's like an act of kindness. So I think relieving people with the techniques, and of course by the will of Lord, I think it's a divine act, to
yeah.
put it into words. I think it's such a divine act because people, when they are stuck, only thing that they see at times is, we want to end this life. It's not worth living. And then, after a very short span, you look at people smiling, thriving. The shift is such an amazing experience. And, at times I get welled up and I'm like, oh, wow, that's, such a beautiful thing to witness. And that makes me more motivated to work, no matter how difficult it gets at times, right? To continue. So I think that's wonderful. And when you were sharing this wonderful story, when I was initially, I started my practice with timeline therapy. I wanted to do it like around the world. I wanted to make sure that this works wonders before I became a trainer of timeline therapy. So I had a client from Rotherham, UK, and she was a client, and she called me and she said that I know nothing what's going on because I recently just recovered cancer. And we were on like going on some travel, and me, my husband, my two children, me and my two children survived, and my husband died at the spot.
Mm-mm.
So I don't know what I'm saying, I don't know what I'm doing, I just like need help. And when I ended that call, I was like, okay, am I ready to just dive into this? And there were doubts, let's be honest, because
Yeah.
I was at the very initial stage of my practice, and I say, oh, it worked wonder for this client, it was wonderful, but what if, because this is something. That client made me realize that there is nothing like major or minor. There is no major or minor problem. It is always your willingness to change.
Yeah,
It is
exactly.
your receptivity towards a process. And it is your acceptance that, okay, what has happened has happened. I want to move forward. And I think that is only the thing that will differentiate one client from the other. Problems are not to be labeled by you or anyone else. For everyone, their problem is a major problem at the end of the day. So believe me that it was just 5 sessions with her, when I did the cleanup work, and I completed the entire process of timeline therapy. It was my basic focus, timeline therapy. And she was like, Manahil, I'm out of this. I know I am out of this. And I was like, really? It's just 5 sessions. Are you sure? And she was giving me affirmations. Yes, Manahil, I am. I was like, can you think again and just confirm me? And like, oh, I'm done. I'm doing amazing. And I feel the transformation. I could
Yeah.
see that too. But see, that point in time, I was like, I am okay with this. I want to do it forever. So, and of course, there are many clients that came in, and at times you get nervous as a professional, that, oh, would I be able to? But I think my major weapon as a coach was timeline therapy. NLP is really powerful, but if I was an NLP trainer since 2022, but I really wanted to top it up with timeline therapy. I was so sure that if I would want to pick up one thing to top my skill set up, that would be timeline therapy. I'm obsessed with the idea. I love how that works. So this is really wonderful. And of course that helps to do wonders for yourself and for other people around. Awesome. So June, if we talk about people might question the at times the authenticity, or how do we actually believe that this particular technique, timeline therapy, is authentic, or is something that we can rely on, or is it ethical or authentic, or all of such consents. How would you see that in the light of your practice and knowledge?
Oh, very good. Very good question. I think you you shared that answer before in NLP prac. I think before during our NLP interview, right? That before they start to question us, why not they prove it by themselves? Right? They try it out. You try something out before you disprove that it doesn't work. And for me, this is also the reason why we also keep on upskilling, right? We don't settle for just practitioner. We just don't settle for master practitioner, but we go for the top. No, that's also what I tell people is that I want to offer people the best there is. The best there is. That's why I invested in a master trainer program. I became a master trainer so that they've got nothing to say. Right? Before you start questioning me, these are my credentials. Before you start questioning me, you try it out, research it, and if you feel that didn't work in your life and other people, when you do it the right way, then that's the time that you start to question me. And it's always about intention for me, Manahel, right? If
True.
you know something that can change people's lives, why would you prevent other people from experiencing it? And you were asking me, or you were sharing earlier, what if it didn't work, right? What if in this client it didn't work? It will always go back to our intention, right? If you have the clear intention of helping your client, you will do whatever it takes to make it work. Unless your client is not willing to change,
Not
right?
willing to
Not
change.
willing to
Yeah,
change. But
that's the only
yeah,
exception.
that was
True.
only but before we take in the client, we give them tasking already. That's the part that we can assess if our client is meant for us. If let's say for the 14-day task, they could not even finish the 14-day task, there's a big possibility that they will be so resistant with what we are doing. And that's also the reason why we don't do timeline therapy in the first session.
Yeah,
Right?
we don't.
Usually we don't do timeline therapy. Usually in the third session, I do timeline therapy in the third session because the first session will just all be about
Yeah,
the client. We'll just be asking
true.
questions, doing meta models,
Understanding the
metaphors,
challenge area. Yeah,
yes, and doing the breakthrough questions, right? The breakthrough questions in timeline therapy.
yeah, the PHQ, right.
Yes, and on the next session would be more about values level thinking, what are the values of the person, and all those things. So the third session, that will be my timeline therapy, negative emotions, then time limiting beliefs. So because we want to loosen the grip first of our clients. Because initially, when you do timeline therapy in the first session, they might get afraid. Right? Who are you to do this, and what's the process? For me, before they start questioning me, they study it first so that they can
True.
really say that what you're doing is not right, right? So, for me, I've experienced the change in my life. I just want to share it to other people, and it's their decision if they want to experience that freedom or not. If they want to be martyrs and masochists, then yeah, go for the and it's their life, right? That's also what I think I
Exactly.
say to them.
I think that that's very true because see, again, we talked about it in the first podcast as well, and when we were talking about breaking myths in NLP, and when people say that it's a pseudoscience or this or that, a lot of things that come up in the process, it was always the fact that we will look forward to the results
Yeah.
as far as anything is producing results for the client and it is empowering them. I think that is all we need, right? And if something wasn't working, it wasn't working for the past you know good 40 years now, it would have gone extinct
I agree.
because it wasn't being used, right? There are so many techniques that have gone extinct. So if it is just thriving and every year we have new trainers, which means they have gone through the practice as a practitioner, then they went through the practice as a master practitioner, and then they came to a trainer level, which means that they have before making we make such big investments to become a trainer. We really take the financial pain in terms of equipping ourselves with the right you can say skill set to train people. So why would somebody go on investing and investing if that's not giving them the results? Because that is the most important thing. Like, why would I ever become a trainer of timeline therapy if I was in the very first place not satisfied with my practice as a practitioner or a master practitioner? So I always tell people that, see, if it has been producing results for me, that is why I am here today. Otherwise, I wouldn't have invested like a millions amount, in my currency to be here where I am today. Of course, it was giving me out something at a personal level, at a professional level, at a financial level. And I reinvested that into the process of making. And for us, it never stops. We were talking about the, podcast also about, my plan further about, upgrading my further qualifications in the field of NLP. And it is because I am seeing results. It is because I am generating that sense of outcome in terms of also, quality of students and finances, so that I'm able to reinvest. So we as practitioners see money as a resource. So we invest that further and become better for our students. We do not see money as a source of greed or as a source of just it's a money making mindset. No, no, that's not the intention. We do the thing we want our students to do. They invest, they charge their clients. Then we invest, we charge our clients. Then we reinvest and become the client for somebody else. So that is how the cycle of growth continues. Money, we just see it as a resource. For me, the submodalities for money would always be like it's a resource. It's a resource. I see that picture like it's a resource for me to become better, to move at higher levels in my development, right? So that is how we look at it. So thank you so much, June. I think that was brief, but that was really clear to, for somebody to understand, if they are really looking forward to the concept of timeline therapy. And very soon, we will come up with something really interesting, more topics with NLP, because it is such an extensive field. We can go on for years, inshallah.
I
So
know.
that is amazing. Yeah.
And you know what's funny, Manahel? I recently went to Manila. I'm in the central part of the Philippines. I'm in the
Okay.
Iloilo, and that was the first time that I met some of my students because everything was so online, right? I do
All right.
my
Yeah.
classes online. So that was the first time some of my students that I met face to face in real life. And when like-minded individuals just meet, everything just connected. So we were just talking about anything about NLP, time and therapy, what they were doing, about how they were changing people's lives with that one. And it's just amazing hearing your students also getting the results that they want in other people's lives. And I believe that timeline therapy is really the game changer.
Game changer.
Game changer,
True.
because there are people who are NLP practitioners in the Philippines, but they didn't get to experience timeline therapy, right? The
Okay.
difference with the NLP is that it gives you the tools to be more positive, right? To go after the life that you want, go after your goals. But at
Goal
the
oriented mindset.
yes,
Yeah.
but the challenge here is that you still have the negative emotions weighing you down. You still have that anger
Mm.
in your past, the fear from your past. And timeline therapy will clear up all those distractions from your past,
The
right?
limiting beliefs. Yeah.
The negative emotions, the limiting beliefs from your past, right? From your past. And what's amazing is that moving forward, when you experience all those negative emotions again, you know how to approach the negative emotion. Just like I don't know if you've seen my Facebook Live earlier, I shared there that negative emotions are initially good, right? Because it will give you the opportunity to assess your life. Why am I angry? Why am I triggered during that time? Why am I fearful? Right? It's giving you strategies to protect yourself moving forward. But the challenge there, if let's say 1 to 2 years or 3 years or 10 years from now, you're still stuck in that situation, the question
Mm.
there is how do you get unstuck and get free
Out
from
of
that
it.
situation. That's where
Mm.
timeline therapy comes in. And when you learn timeline therapy, you approach challenges differently. What are the
True.
positive learnings? What are the positive learnings do I learn from this situation right now, instead of another struggle in my life, right? But right now we can just step
Yeah.
back, ask yourself, what are the positive learnings? What is it teaching me to become better? So
That's very true. It's all about learnings, because the cloud of negative emotions, when we talk about it, it's always about making new positive learnings. But see, that can't be made at the conscious level, because why are we not doing it right now? Right? It is an unconscious process. It has to be done with the coach. It has to be followed through by the proper script. And that is how, things happen. At times clients say, I don't know what I'm saying. I said, yeah, because you're not using your conscious mind, and
Mhm.
I don't want you to use it also. So just keep it at rest. So it's amazing to experience it, and I think you only know the power when you go through it yourself first. That's very important, and then you give out that empowerment when then you know what your client is going through when you take them through the process. So it's very important to first empower yourself and then empower other people around, because you would only be able to give what you have. So, with this note, I think it's time to wind up today's podcast. And very soon we will be coming up with something really splendid and amazing in the field of NLP. Till then, thank you so much, June, and thank you, everyone. See you next time.
Thank you everyone. Thank you, Manahel.